Appreciate you joining us here as always. And we want to continue to update you here on these stories. Hunter Biden right now still in court after offering up his guilty plea. Really shocking the court system here today. Fox News even reporting that the DOJ did not see this coming. A live look right now outside of the courthouse in Los Angeles. There is a podium set up to see if anybody will come after the day and speak, but we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that. But I do want to bring in our next guest here of this hour, Neama Rahmani. Thanks so much for joining us, former federal prosecutor, to talk about the big day out in Los Angeles and the shock that happened with Hunter Biden doing a switcheroo.
Mike, shocker, I'm sitting here a mile away from the courthouse, and no one thought that Hunter Biden would plead and plead pursuant to an Alford plea and really plead open. So, an Alford plea is named after a pretty famous Supreme Court case, and some states it's called a no contest plea. But essentially, the defendant pleads no contest, or what they're saying is, I'm not admitting guilt, but I am admitting that the government has enough evidence to convict me beyond a reasonable doubt. So I'm not really contesting the charges or the evidence. For all intents and purposes, it's the same. The defendant is going to be sentenced. In some states, it might not be able to be used against the defendant in a civil case. On the federal side, it can. So, really surprising turn of events, really, as the 120 potential jurors were in the courthouse waiting to be called in to hear this case. Jury selection was supposed to start today.
Yeah, I mean, it's so abrupt there. And tell me, Neema, is there any advantage to Hunter Biden to waiting until this period to issue and want to plead guilty on the day of jury selection? Or did it really not matter if he did it today or even last week?
Mike, the only advantage is time because 99% of defendants, when they plead guilty, they plead pursuant to a plea agreement. They get a reduced sentence. They get some of the charges dropped. They get a different recommendation from the government. Rarely does a defendant plead open or plead to the sheet or the indictment, which is happening here, which means Hunter Biden can't pick and choose. He has to plead guilty to 9 felony tax counts because the government isn't offering him any type of deal. In fact, they're opposing this Alford plea. The Department of Justice has a pretty long-standing internal policy that says that if defendants want to plead guilty, they can, but they have to admit the elements of the charge. They have to admit their guilt, and they can't maintain their innocence while doing so.
Now, some people would want to know if Hunter Biden wasn't the son of a president, would someone do this going into court there as jury selection is about to start and you plead guilty?
The answer is probably not, Mike. And what likely is happening behind the scenes, and my prediction is Hunter Biden has a pardon locked up because normally someone wouldn't just plead to 9 counts when they can negotiate some sort of deal with the government. Let's not forget the original deal on the table was for Hunter Biden to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax counts. And that would resolve both cases in Delaware and in California, the gun case and the tax case. So now we know, of course, Hunter was convicted of multiple felony counts in Delaware, but now we're just eating 9 tax counts here in California. And the only reason someone would do something like this is the very real possibility that Joe Biden is going to pardon his son Hunter on his way out. He has no reason not to do so. He's a lame duck president. My prediction is that he's going to wait until after the November election, of course, so there's no more political fallout. But I fully expect Hunter Biden to get a pardon in this case.
And what is the timeline look here just on the sentencing? So when they leave the courtroom today, will they know, okay, we have a sentencing date? And what does that look like? Will it be before or after the election?
It's going to be after the election, but just barely. So the way it works is obviously the government is going to object to this Alford plea. So it's up to the judge, Mark Scarzy, here in Los Angeles, actually used to work with him, and he's going to have to decide whether he's going to accept this Alford plea or not. If he does, the next date that is going to be scheduled is going to be a sentencing, but the sentencing doesn't occur right away. for one very important reason. U.S. probation, which is an arm of the court, they have to prepare a pre sentence report. And it usually takes them about 2 to 3 months to do so. So that's probably going to put us out close to December, if not December. And a pre sentence report discusses the defendant, his history, his characteristics, criminal history, health, all this sort of information. So at sentencing, there's actually three sets of recommendations. The government, the Department of Justice is going to make their recommendation, probably going to argue for jail time. The defense is going to make their recommendation. I'm sure they're going to argue for probation. And probation, aptly named, is going to make its own recommendation. And to do so, they do need some time.
Yes, definitely a lot of moving parts here, and really a shocker that came earlier this morning in Los Angeles with the a guilty plea there. But Neama Rahmani, thanks so much for joining us on Live Now from Fox and giving us some great insight here into this matter. We really appreciate it as always.
Thanks, Mike.
You take care. And we are continuing to bring you a